All right, we're going back now. Wait, what is that? Huh. All right, guys, we are back. Sorry about that. We're back. All right, we're back. Now I'm gonna get to some of your questions that I couldn't get to before. By the way, I need to know. I want to know if you guys can hear. Can you guys hear music right now? Can you hear music right now? Yes or no? Yeah, Coog, I'm gonna look at your comment here, and then we're gonna start. We're gonna talk about ACC tournament format change. All right, you mama. I don't think aerial or terrestrial changes as they age. Yeah, agreed. I understood Swope's thing, and my kid is what he is since 5 years old. He is also in Taekwondo and wrestling for 3 years. He is still an aerial. Yeah, like that's okay. I'm wondering if I played like music on YouTube in the background, if you guys would be able to hear it, but you can't. So I just have to, because I don't really like the streaming software I use. It gives you like, do you guys prefer there being like some quiet music in the background or no music? That's what I need to know. But let's go. Since you are in the Georgia Tech world, thoughts on Karsten Sabathia? He transferred to Houston. Yeah, I think he has light tower power. Um, and from talking to the coaches, it was just like no one felt like he was just ready to play. I mean, just at that level. Now they could be totally wrong, but I just never got the sense from the coaching staff that they felt like he was, good enough to play. And again, he's a first baseman DH basically. So again, guys, like if you're a first baseman in college baseball or you're in high school right now trying to go to college, like dude, it's tough because like there's just so many portal bats, like corner infield bats that are good. We're live again. That's right. Canes, Eugene back at it. Coog, you see my last comment on previous live. Yeah, so I hope you hope that answers it. You guys can't hear that music right now. That's what I wanted to know. I think this is what we wanted, but I don't like the single elimination. Yeah, we'll talk in. I think it's definitely way better than, but there are negatives, and we're gonna get into that in a second. My main issue is what happens to 8. Okay. 9, 10, 10, 11. If they lose game one, are they now on the bubble instead of being a lock for the tournament? Are they completely eliminated now? It's a great question. Oh yeah, Charles, you don't like the music? Okay, no worries. I would assume the top 8 are locks for the tournament and the top 4 are locks to host. Yeah, that's probably a good assumption. So I'm going to pull it up now. Um, and we'll read the article first and then we'll look at the actual bracket. So that's just like we get the real, um, everyone kind of gets a good understanding of how changed this is. Okay. Beginning in the spring of 2025, the ACC baseball, so that's this spring, in the championship in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, all 16 teams in the ACC will compete in a single elimination championship. I do not like this. Um, because like it just doesn't feel right to me that the 16th overall seed in the league, so the worst team in the league, like has a chance to win the ACC championship. Like that would be, and again, it's apples to oranges, but you guys get what I'm saying. It would be like the worst team in the SEC in football still having a chance to win the SEC title. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Uh, and again, we kind of you felt like the tournament was going to get bigger because you added more teams. with the expansion in the ACC. And so again, I don't like that all 16 teams make it, but I do like the format better. The championship will remain 6 days as it has in previous years, running from Tuesday, May 20th through Sunday, May 25th. So, it's the same thing. There's once again tremendous excitement surrounding ACC baseball, and today's announcement will bring an improved championship experience for our student athletes, coaches, and fans alike. Obviously, they want every team going so that every team's fans will go. Going to make more money at in Durham, the Durham Bulls Stadium. Commissioner Jim Phillips, PhD. Nationally, the ACC once again well represented. Preseason polls, what yada yada yada. Under the new since 2006, the ACC baseball championship has been played in pool play or round robin style format. The tournament last expanded its field size in 2017, moving from 10 teams to 12. Right. So I remember when I played. I mean, you like it wasn't. I think it was even maybe 8 at that point, and they had just moved, or they maybe my sophomore year or junior year they moved it to 10. But like again, not every team made it, and I think that's fine. But I will say this: the move from the 10-team format to the 12-team format, the 12-team format was atrocious, atrocious. So under the new format, the top 4 seeds in the championship will be based off the performance in the regular season and will receive a double bye into the quarterfinal round. Love that. Reward the teams that are the best in the regular season. So that's great, which is scheduled to be held on Thursday and Friday. Seeds 5 through 8 will earn a bye into Wednesday's second round. Seeds 9 through 16 will begin play with 4 first-round games on Tuesday. So this is very similar to the SEC format now. That Tuesday are basically play-in games, right? It's not exactly the SEC format, but this format is so much better because you actually have to win. The problem with the previous format is it's 12 teams, there's 4 pools of 3, and basically the number 1 seed in each pool has to just beat the team that wins the first game of the second and third seed. So there's in each pool there's a guaranteed, and under the previous format, guaranteed in each pool there is one meaningless game that makes no sense, right? And that's just a sign of a bad format when there's meaningless games being played. This is going to make it to where there's none. Kane says, I'm cool with that. I'm just not liking that other teams are playing two to 3 games and they can stack good wins against high-ranking teams. And with recency bias, the ACC teams at 9, 10, 11 take a hit. I'm not liking that other teams are playing 2/3 games and they can stack good wins against high-ranking teams, while those other teams in other conferences get boosted because they got high-quality wins at the end because of the tournament. Well, I mean, you got to think about it. Like the worst teams in the league are going to have to go through the gauntlet. Like the worst seeded teams are going to be playing, and we'll go over the bracket in a second. But they're going to play, extra games. So the likelihood that again, and this is how it should be. The lowest seeded teams, seeds 9 through 16. I mean, they're going to go through the gauntlet, and pitching depth is going to be a major factor. Now, one of our advisors, Pat Pinkman, he talked about what we were talking about this in the group text today. And his whole thing was, you move the rosters to 34, and now every team gets to go in. They're playing a lot of games. This could be, and right before you get into regional play. So with this format, you could see maybe more pitching injuries, but we'll just have to wait and see. The single elimination championship format will feature 4 games per day on Tuesday, first round, and Wednesday, second round. So if you're seeds 5 through 8, I believe, 5 through 8, you don't play on Tuesday. Your first game would be Wednesday. 2 quarterfinal games will take place on both Thursday and Friday, while Saturday will host the 2 semifinal contests. Sunday will host the championship. Tickets for the 2025 go on sale Wednesday. It's going to be in Durham. The altered format also provides an optimal postseason experience for teams and fans alike. The change was proposed by the league's 16 head coaches and has received direct support from the student athletes. Single elimination format provides a more exciting and easier to follow true championship format, which will enhance fan engagement. I 100% agree there. The problem with the previous format is, again, there were so many meaningless games being played, and it really did give the top seed in each pool, which they deserve to have advantages, but it just seems like a ridiculous advantage where you basically just threw off against the team that you didn't have to beat, and you just threw your ace against a team that needed to get beat, or you needed to beat. Whereas the other two teams in the pool, they're kind of like, again, those teams deserve advantages for being the top seeds, but I like this format way better because there's no meaningless games being played, and the lowest seeds have to go through the gauntlet if they're going to win it. So I do. This format is 100 times better than the previous ACC format. The previous ACC format was complete garbage. It was 8 or 10 teams in 2012. Yeah, let's look. Let's look, and then we're going to pull up the actual bracket so you guys can see that. All right, let's see here. Yeah, it was 8 teams. Yeah, we were the eighth seed. So think about that. And again, at that point in the ACC, there was only, you know 10, 12 teams, but still, that's 33% of the league that doesn't make the tournament. Um, and so again, it's like, what why I don't like, and again, this is, you guys can disagree with me. This isn't like it's not a major thing, but I just don't like that every team makes the ACC tournament. 2017 is when it moved to 12. I think it was 8 teams. Yeah, it was 8 teams. Most conferences, you play 2 to 3 games just to make it to the next round. Um, well, in some conference tournaments, there's like nobody, like barely any make it. A 9 seed in the Big 12 that should have no business being in contention can stack a win against the top overall seed and the number 8 seed. No, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is, to me, what's going to happen is I just don't like you could potentially go 0-30 in the ACC schedule, and you're in the ACC tournament with a chance to win the championship. Now, it's not very likely that you win it if you go 0-30, but the fact that you still have a chance is a little bit questionable to me. I'm not against a good percentage of the conference making the tournament, but does it have to be all 16? Why couldn't it just stay at 12? And why can't it stay at 12 and we can just change the format? That's, to me, that's what I don't get. Is like the problem with the ACC tournament wasn't like the amount of teams that make it. It was the fact that the format was just terrible to watch and not exciting, because really the pool play games were just not fun to watch, and it was very, again, it was just like, oh, that team has to win that team. Oh, they're playing today, but this game doesn't mean anything. No one's going to watch the game if they think it's a meaningless game, and it is a meaningless game. That was my whole contention with the format, is that you just have way too many meaningless games. All right, so let's look at the actual bracket so you guys can see this. Let's change it up here. All right, here we go. All right, so basically, let me zoom out because it's kind of so you guys can see this better. Okay, that's still not. All right, that's fine. Okay, so obviously, first round is Tuesday. These are all your lower seeds, right? You win this game, you face kind of the second tier of teams in the ACC, not your top four, but your 5 through 8 seed. And again, the advantage you have as a higher seed is you're going to be playing less games throughout the tournament. Bullpen's going to be fresher. Again, like the biggest advantage really for one of these lower tier and again, there's going to be some 9 seeds and 10 seeds in the ACC. Remember, the tens ACC is projected to have 10 regional teams, so there's going to be a few teams uh, that start playing on Tuesday that are actually really good. But what you're basically going to have if you're going to win the ACC tournament in this format from playing on day one first round, you're going to need some starting pitchers to be horses. You're going to need some 7 inning games out of your starting pitchers, and then you have a shot. But okay, so now you move up day two on Wednesday. You're facing one of the higher seeds. You win that game. Now you got to face one of the best teams in the ACC on Thursday and Friday. So these games will be played. Two of these games will be played on Thursday. Two of these games will be played on Friday. I like that because it gives teams a day of rest, right? If you play Thursday, you're off Friday. If you play Friday, you're off Thursday. It gives your bullpen a day of rest to get a couple guys that maybe wouldn't be fresh back into kind of the ready to go category. And again, it's just, it's nice to have a day in there where your team just gets to rest. So that's great. You win this game, now you're in the semifinals on Saturday. You win this game, you're in the finals on Sunday in the championship game. So if you're from one of the bottom seeds, you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in total, which really isn't that bad. Um, it's not terrible, right? I mean, big league. I mean, this is a professional base. This is pro ball schedule, right? You play every day. But watch for the game times, right? If you're playing in a 1 p.m. game, 1 p.m. game, 7 p.m. game, 1 p.m. game. Um, Again, it's just timing can affect your team and everything like that. There's a game time 9 p.m. So let's say you win this game. I guess you win this game 9 p.m. You go to, and this is well done by the league. 1 p.m. game, you don't play till Sunday, or 7 p.m. the next day. 9 a.m. game, you don't play till 3 p.m. the next day. So they actually have done a pretty good job with managing the timing of these games. Man, that 9 p.m. game, that's gonna be a 1 o'clock back to the hotel at 1 o'clock type day. For Miami, it was great because we were always the top four seed. Yeah, yeah. And actually, in 2012 when we won it, that's who we beat was Miami. Last year we were the 12th seed and made it to the Final Four. Yep. I mean, don't get me wrong. It definitely makes it. The question then becomes, let's say like the 16th overall seed, say the worst team in the ACC finds a way to win it. Now, does that bid into the tournament? Does that take away a regional team that would have made it from the ACC, or does that steal a bid from an at-large mid-major? That's the question. Is the ACC is that going to be good for the ACC because they add another team in the regionals, or is it going to be bad because it takes away a bid from a even better team in the ACC in the regular season? Based off conference projections, Miami would play Boston College on Tuesday, and winner would play Stanford. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see because certainly, and this is the other issue. Um, and again, it's baseball, so it's kind of like take what you will from this. But with every team being in the tournament, some of these paths are going to be like really difficult, and some of these paths are going to be, oh, they had a cakewalk to the championship game or whatever. Now, again, once you get to Thursday and Friday and you're playing the top four seeds, you know, that's when it's going to get more difficult. But your first couple games, you could be like, oh, we're not playing anybody. So it's just interesting to see. Um, it's interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see just um, how it's going to run this year. I have done the ACC tournament for ACC Network and on radio a couple times, so maybe I'll do that again this year. Definitely would be a blast. All right, so let's see here. But overall, guys, positives and negatives, way more positives um, to this new format for the ACC. It cannot be understated how horrendous the previous format was. It was to the point where, I mean, it was just like anytime I talk to anybody about it, I'm just like, our tournament, like myself as a former player in the ACC and player at Georgia Tech, like I want the ACC to be the best, just as a fan, right? Professionally, I can't really have that opinion. But as a fan, I just want, and especially in the SEC too, because I'm a fan of the SEC. But I watch the SEC tournament and I'm like, man, this is an actual tournament format. And I watch the ACC tournament, I'm like, this is the least exciting thing I've ever watched. That's how we'll get the most teams. What the ACC needs to do is dominate non-conference schedule. Yeah, 100%, 100%, right? Like, 'cause if you guys think about it. You go undefeated in your non-conference schedule, um, and you're a 15 team win in the ACC, you're making the tournament. Yeah, Canes, that those preseason tournaments, or not preseason, but you know what I mean. The start of the year kind of round robin tournaments that are going on, uh, I think are going to be great. They're going to be really exciting to watch. But you're right. I mean, that's what the ACC needs to do. And there actually are quite a few uh, writers and people that follow the game that are projecting the ACC to do better this year than the SEC. We'll have to wait and see. Um, but I mean, certainly, I mean the two uh, conferences are just head and shoulders above everybody else. They are huge for making the tournament. You're exactly right, Canes. And I again, I think that's like I've told you kind of what the thought process was for like my teammates and guys I played with when we were in the midweek. Like we took those games as serious, almost sometimes more seriously than some of the ACC schedules, because like this was we felt like this was our turf. Like you're facing Georgia Southern, um, you're facing Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Mercer, um, all of those. So yeah, we want to. First of all, we don't want to lose. Like we're a top 15, top 10 team. We're not going to lose. But it was also bragging rights because a lot of those midweek games are in-state competitions, and so we always felt like, man, like we just want to go out and beat these guys. But you watch some of these games now, and you even hear it like, we just weren't ready to play today, or we weren't ready to play in the midweek after we're looking ahead to the big ACC matchup, and it's like, okay, um, D1 baseball, it has a great. They're like ACC moves away from pool play. Thank God, unveils new bracket format. Really good. All right, we just got the season preview for the top 100 outfielders in the ACC. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the top 100 outfielders in the ACC. um, be interesting. Who's going to be number one, guys? Jace Lavalette from, I'm guessing, Texas A&M. All right. Kane says that's literally how DBU makes the tournament. Their non-conference wins are incredible, dude. But DBU is a like this is. All right, we're back. Can you guys hear me? Jeez, I don't know what just happened there. Okay. Frozen, brother. Yeah, no, I'm back. Sorry. I don't know. That's literally never happened before. It just said reconnecting, lost connection, reconnecting. So who do we think number one is, guys? Who do we think number one is? I feel like I'm turning into a boomer. Like I'm trying. This guy told me to DM him, and like now I can't figure out how to DM. Dude. Okay, I'm gonna just. I'll try. I'll try later because I know I can't. I can't. I don't know how to work Twitter anymore. All right. I root based on who I want to see in Omaha go every year. Oh, that's awesome, dude. I've been to Omaha because I played in AAA. The Royals AAA is Omaha Storm Chasers, but I've never been to the College World Series. But I mean, I bet it's just a blast. Who knows? Maybe we'll see if we go this year. Fun when there's a mid-major like DBU 2 years ago. It was funny how much smaller they were size-wise than SEC, ACC. Stanford has no fans. Yeah, yeah. Some schools, their fans just really don't travel well. Um, But Buck, that's how you know, like Dan Hefner at Dallas Baptist, who, like, quite frankly, I was very surprised that he did not. I thought for sure he was a lock, or at least one of going to be one of the finalists for the A&M job because of what he's done at Dallas Baptist and turning it into a complete powerhouse in baseball. And what I was saying is that Dallas Baptist really is like you have to think of them more like a Power Four team than a mid-major team. And the same is true of Coastal Carolina, Southern Miss, a lot of those Sun Belt teams like Georgia Southern. Again, they're not going to be as consistently good as like a powerhouse SEC team or ACC team because again, they don't have the recruiting power of that conference behind them. But every year or two, every couple of years, those guys are uh, big time. And again, I mean, they're really good every year. Dallas Baptist is in the top 25 almost every year. So just again, I was really surprised. I thought, man, if you're going to go after a proven head coach who's done it with way less resources, and again, Dallas Baptist, great facilities, everything like that, but it's not A&M resources. Um, and so I thought for sure he was going to be like a I thought he's the guy that's going to get the job. And then obviously everything happened with Michael early, and obviously like A&M made the decision to we want to keep our team intact. We're going to go with Michael. everything like that. But I thought for sure Hefner was going to be the front runner for that job, just because he's local. He's recruited the state of Texas. Um, it just fit too well. It would be like, um, and again, Texas A&M is a global job, so like they're not trying to get a local guy per se, but for what Dan Heath's done at Dallas Baptist, like he certainly should be on every major college's radar when it comes to head coach jobs opening. Should be Drew Burress. If my Cougs go to the College World Series, I'm going. Who are the Cougs? Yeah, it's Houston. I truly don't know. Don't take it as disrespect, please. It's all right, man. All right, let's look at the now that everything is working properly. We also make use of, okay, so let's see. These are not professional prospect lists. That's what you'll find is that like the really high professional prospects tend to be higher up on this list, but it doesn't mean these guys are going to be, these rankings aren't based on where they're going to get drafted potentially. It's just based on how productive they are at the college level. And there's a lot of players now with only 20 rounds in the draft that are really good, like very good, productive, quite frankly, almost star players in college that don't get drafted. So, and they take into consideration how they played against competition in summer ball, that and basically use that as a kind of as a proxy for the potential for them. They're going to break out the next year. So they could have performed not very good last year in the season, but they did really well in summer ball. They may be poised for a bigger performance this year. We also try to keep the numbers in context because some leagues or ballparks are more offensive than others, and some leagues simply have more talent than others. So all stat lines are not created equal. 100%. So your stat line in the ACC and the SEC is going to be weighted differently than if you're in like a smaller conference where you're not facing as elite arms as you are in those two major conferences. So we take an amalgam of past numbers, raw talent, defensive ability, especially at premium positions, makeup and reports of development over the summer and fall. We also make use of more advanced metrics like defensive runs saved and WAR, courtesy of our partners at 643 Charts. Finally, remember that there are more than 300 Division I teams, and we're ranking roughly the top 15% at each position. These lists reflect our projections of which players will be the best of the best this spring, but many good players in the remaining 85% just didn't make the cut. We'll revisit the player rankings over the course of the season. With all that said, we'll look at the top 100 outfielders in college baseball heading into the 25 season. First team preseason All-Americans Drew Burress, Cam Canarella, and Jace Lavalette lead the way. So who's number one? Drew Burress, the number one outfielder preseason for 2025. And just look, I mean, the numbers are just ridiculous, guys. Here's the thing that you will see that really stands out the most. I mean, again, the OPS is just insane in the ACC. 381, 500, over 500 on base percentage, 58 walks as a freshman to 37 strikeouts. Like, there's not a greener flag in existence for a freshman hitter that hit for this much power than 58 walks to 37 Ks as a freshman. Most freshmen who hit for this kind of power are not hitting anywhere near 381, and they have way more strikeouts and walks. And eventually, over the next couple of years, that number will get, what you want is that to become closer together. But then it's Cam Canarella, Jace Lavalette, Schubert. Very similar year to Drew Burress. I mean, he's the only one that really out OPS'd him with a lot less at bats or plate appearances. I will say, there is a disparity here. I mean, 60 plate appearances is not a small number. So again, we have to wait and see. But very similar RBI, home run, double numbers, less walks and way more strikeouts. So that's why I give the edge to Drew Burress here, even though the OPS is a little bit higher for Schubert. Like Drew Burress is just an overall, not nearly as much swing and miss, almost half the strikeouts of Schubert. Did the Tennessee center fielder graduate or is he back? Forget his name, but he made some amazing catches in the tourney last year. He was Cuvée protection in the Cape. Yeah, that helps too. Canarella made that amazing Willie Mays catch against Florida in the Super last year. Yeah, we'll see. I'd have to look. I can't remember his name either, Buck. So we'd have to look. Okay, so we have Ethan Petrie, South Carolina, Ethan Conrad, Wake Forest. And remember, this is outfielders too, but what you have to remember is these three guys are center fielders, right? So there's even more value to these guys because they are playing the premium position in the outfield. AJ Gracia, Duke, John Bay, Austin P, Henry Ford, Virginia. Henry Ford is being moved from first base to the outfield, so that is a change. And again, these are Henry Ford's numbers are again more typical of your freshman power hitters because hit 330, which again you got to remember these balls are juiced. So like this guy in my era maybe he hits like 300, around 300, definitely with less home runs. But you see the strikeout to walk ratio, 29 walks, fine, it's fine. 290 plate appearances, 29 walks, so he's at a 10% walk rate. Um, 53 strikeouts, again, not terrible. I mean, you want that to get down a little bit, but for a freshman, he's in a good spot. But again, Drew Burris had, these numbers were reversed for Drew Burris, right? Harrison Didewick, another guy from Virginia, hit for a lot of power last year. Hunter Ensley from Tennessee, 296, but 922 OPS, 15 doubles, 12 home runs, 27 walks to 48 Ks. Um, what you find, guys, no Max Galvin invalid. He's not on here yet. RJ Austin. Here's my gripe with RJ Austin is, dude, if you can only hit 4 home runs in this climate, that is not good. Like in this climate, if you have anywhere, like if you have 40 grade major league power, so like well below average major league power, you're probably still hitting like 8 home runs. So the power number here is a little bit tough for me, and the low walk rate. So he's walking less than 10% of the time. And again, in this era, the strike zone is a tin can because all these umpires now have TrackMan data and they're getting graded on it. And so in my era, 4 inches off the plate was a strike all the time. It's not that way anymore, right? And these hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, mute. What do you mean by mute, Buck? He has ABs in D1. Yeah. All right, so let's keep looking. Jack Winay from Wake Forest, again, another big power bat. Again, look like just for example, guys, my junior year, Daniel Palka was our power, hitting middle of the order bat. He hit 17 home runs. He was third in the country. Right? How many guys do you see that have more home runs than that? Sorry, that's on me. No problem, Buck. I take it personally though, because you're muting me, I guess. Um, Ben Watson at Virginia Tech, who hit 417 last year. Not for a lot of power, but I mean, super high on high on base, high batting average. Um, that's a great bat to have in your lineup, coming back hitting over 400. Let's see here. Max Williams, Florida State. Kyle Jones from Florida. Cade Bellew from Auburn. Remember, some of these stats from last year, you may look at them and be like, what? But they're taking into account, and again, this is the red flag here. I mean, 32 strikeouts and 122 plate appearances, but he had 8 home runs in 122 plate appearances. So you double that, he's probably at 64 strikeouts, only 24 walks, which is low, but 16 home runs. A lot of A&M guys on this list. Josh Tate from Georgia Southern. Tom Poole from Dallas Baptist. Robbie Burnett from Georgia, who hit 18 last year. A lot of walks. Devin Obie, another guy from Georgia, the transfer from Duke. Hit 16 jacks. And again, at Georgia's Field is now, uh, pretty good place to hit with how offensive everything is now. Brady Council, son of Craig Council at Kansas. Good year last year, good walk to strikeout ratio. I want to see that average up a little bit more, but high on base, high slugging. Ben Rounds from Duke in 180 plate appearances, 403. Let's see. Derek Curiel, the freshman at Virginia or LSU, probably one of the most highly touted freshmen in the country. And three freshmen back to back here. James Nunnally from Virginia, Chris Rembert from Auburn, all projected to be top 15% in D1, according to D1 baseball. Tyson Bass from North Carolina as a D2 transfer. Golly. Jonathan Hogart, Murray State. Ty Strauss, Southeast Missouri. Garrett Pike, Louisville. Derek Williams, Miami. UNC Greensboro. Ty Daly, Mercer. 21 jacks last year for the Mercer. Guys down in Macon. Uh-oh, you're not going to like this one, Canes. Blake, I don't know how you say this guy's last name, but the Miami transfer, he's going to be playing outfield for the Gators. Oh, yeah, I'll zoom in. Sorry, Coog. Is that you, Cougs? Yeah, here we go. Is that better? Let's see here. Cole Haig, Kentucky. Really good year last year. Let's see who rounds out this list. Jay Abernathy from Tennessee. This is the freshman. Again, I did a video on him a while ago, and everyone's saying this guy's the best shortstop in the world. He's going to be a shortstop. He's amazing. And I said, I've seen his actions. I don't know if he's necessarily a shortstop. Every scout I talked to said he's a center fielder, not going to play infield at the next level. And boom, he's going to be playing outfield at Tennessee, probably center field for Tennessee. All right. So let's go back. I know they did shortstops. We'll go over the shortstops as well, top 50 shortstops. Right. The reason you do top 100 outfielders is there's 3 outfielders, right? There's only one shortstop. There's only one first baseman, one third baseman. So they do top 50. So look through these. Number 1, Merrick Houston at Wake Forest. Again, not just because of his offensive output, really good numbers, more walks and strikeouts, but fabulous defender. And that's part of this at shortstop. Remember, guys, it's not just about how good you are offensively. Jonathan Stein from Vanderbilt, Colby Shelton from Florida, Eric Becker from Virginia, who had a great year last year. But you want to see, again, only 159 plate appearances, did really well, 8 home runs in a small amount of plate appearances, a lot of strikeouts, not many walks, but a little 10% walk rate, a little bit over 10%, so you're fine there. Kyle Lodice at Georgia Tech, transfer from Augusta in Tennessee, or sorry, in Georgia, the D2 transfer. So these are Georgia Tech's, from what I have seen, these are Georgia Tech's only 2 players on the top lists. Just look at Justin LeBron. That pains me. Yeah, I bet it would. But okay, Kyle Lotus, Caden Kent, Jeff Kent's son at A&M, 129 plate appearances. He hit 327. Good walk to strikeout ratio, just like his dad. Decent amount of home runs. You double that, he's probably around the 9 to 10 range in a full season, maybe more, because he did get kind of off and on playing time. Wallace Clark from Duke, Colby Branch from Georgia. And remember, look, like you see in the shortstop, now you're seeing in the shortstop a lot of guys who are under the 300 mark batting average wise, right here, right here, right here, right here, because there's such a priority on the defense at shortstop that to play shortstop, you have to be a certain level defensively, and just most players are not at that level. So then again, it's like you're looking for a very rare type defender who's also a good hitter. And it's just so the offensive production is not going to be what it is at like a corner outfield spot or corner infield spot, because those guys are a dime a dozen. We took Antonio Jimenez, who was a top 50 player, and LeBron was a top 500 player from the same high school, Archbishop McCarthy. LeBron ended up being the better player, both shortstops. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you swing and miss on that. Alex Lodice, Florida State. This is Kyle Lodice's cousin, I believe. So both guys are shortstops in the ACC. Again, for Alex, I mean, the only thing that stands out, really low walk rate, well below 10%, really high strikeout rate. So, he's basically at a 25% strikeout rate and like a 7% walk rate. So you want those numbers to come closer together. Dude, I've been battling like a stuffed nose for 3 weeks, I feel like. Clay Grady from Virginia Tech, 335. I think they're cousins, Canes. I thought they were brothers, but I'm pretty sure they're cousins. Jordan Donahue from Hawaii, Sam Miller from Columbia, Alex Alicia from Louisville, Justin DeCrisio, NC State, Caleb Johnson, Jacksonville State, Tyler Bell, Kentucky, freshman, Owen Pano, Ole Miss, freshman. Not a lot of freshmen on this list. Peyton Watts from Troy, even though, man, that freshman year was tough. Uh, he must have done really well in summer ball. What's your standard for walks to strikeout? I mean, in college, your elite hitters are going to walk as much as they strike out in that general area. I mean, at the pro level, you want guys to be above a 10% strikeout rate, or sorry, above a 10% walk rate. But again, everything's nuanced. So if you're like an Ichiro and you hit 340 every year, because you're putting so many balls in play and you're getting a lot of hits, you're not going to walk as much. So Ichiro did not have a high walk rate, but he had a very high batting average and he put a lot of balls in play and got a lot of hits. So it didn't matter, right? Because his batting average is so high, you're not going to walk as much. But generally speaking, for college, strikeout rates, if you're at the 20 percentile, if you're striking out 20% of the time, that's not terrible. Um, Generally speaking, I would like your strikeout rate to be below 20%. If it is above 20%, you got to drive the baseball, right? You better be getting extra base hits, home runs, driving runs in, and that's where the whole OPS discussion kind of breaks down. It's like if a guy has a high OPS, but he's not scoring a lot of runs, he's not driving in a lot of runs. I don't care what the OPS says; he's not as valuable to your team as you think. Um, and again, so like the higher the strikeout rate, just you got to think about it like this. If you're striking out in 40% of your at bats, that means out of 100 at bats, you have 40 strikeouts. So only 60 at bats are you putting the ball in play. And most guys, their batting average on balls in play is around, generally speaking, like let's just say, for example, like 30 points higher than our batting average. So if you're a 300 hitter, and let's say what batting average on balls in play is 330. So in that still 60 at bats, you're hitting 330, which means you get 20 hits. That means you're a 200 hitter in 100 at bats. So just the higher you strike out, it just becomes almost impossible to hit for a high average. And at that point, you better be not just hitting singles, you better be hitting home run. I mean, if you're striking out 40% of the time, you better hit a lot of home runs and a lot of doubles. Um, because it just gets untenable at that high level. And that's why even at a 30% strikeout rate, like a 30, my dad's rule of thumb, and for most of you guys know, but some of you guys don't. My dad was a general manager of major league teams, front office executive for almost 40 years uh, at a high level in Major League Baseball, and a couple World Series rings. Played professionally. And his rule of thumb was whatever a guy strikes out in the minor leagues, whatever his strikeout rate is, let's say it's 15%, it's probably going to be like 25% in the major leagues. Now, again, that's generally speaking. Some guys you aren't going to see that. Some guys you're going to see it even worse. But that was his rule of thumb. Is just basically his assumption was always if you're whatever your strikeout rate was in the minor leagues, like you're generally going to be striking out more, probably 10% more of the time. So if you're a guy in the minor leagues that strikes out 30% of the time, like that's a bad sign. And I played with some guys in the minor leagues in AAA who were those kind of guys. I mean, they were 30% strikeout rate, and then they got to the big leagues, and it was like for almost a 50% strikeout rate. You're talking Lewis Brinson, Brett Phillips. Um, just high strikeout rate makes it almost impossible to hit for a high average, and that's why OPS is good because you can find value in some players that may not hit for high average, but when they do hit the ball, it's for damage. But again, you, here's the problem with analytics. You guys have heard me say this before. The problem with analytics is I can take any hit player and use analytics to make him look better than he is, use analytics to make him look worse than he is. So the question is really just how much value does this guy bring to your team? Blake's here is a 30% strikeout rate. Yeah, so like for me, Blake, he like you better be hitting doubles and triples and home runs. Can a player walk too much? The old Joey Votto criticism. Yeah, 100%. I mean, the old like the adage in the Dominican and like Venezuela, and even though Venezuela isn't an island, but in the Dominican and Puerto Rico, like they tell the kids like you can't walk off the island. Meaning you may have the best eye in the world, but if they don't think you have the bat, you can't hit. You're not getting off out of the Dominican. Um, and so with Joey Votto, for example, it's not really that they walk too much. The issue becomes, well, are they missing opportunities to do damage, right? Are they taking too many pitches? Are they too passive at the plate? And this is something you see all the time. Like my dad would tell me every series in the minor leagues, like you got to pick one game, you're leading off the game. You know, if you got to pick one game, or at least one of those games, you get a cookie first pitch, you gotta crush it because you don't want the pitchers to think you're the typical leadoff hitter that just takes every first pitch of the game. So I would do that just as a way. One, you tend to get a lot of good pitches as a leadoff hitter on the very first pitch of the game because every pitcher thinks you're not swinging. But I just, in the back of their mind, I wanted them to make sure I got to execute this pitch. I can't just throw like a cookie down the middle and he's going to take it. So you can, part of the reason why you can what being too passive can hurt you is because pitchers think, okay, this guy's not swinging first pitch, and then they just get a free first strike. And now you're 0-1, and we know the numbers on that. You start an 0-1 count, your batting average is way down. So it's not that walking is always valuable. The problem with it, like for a guy like Joey Votto, and I was in big league camp with Joey Votto and got to listen to him talk. I mean, the guy's probably the most cerebral hitter to ever hit. If anyone tried to hit like he did and what was going through his mind, pitch to pitch and everything like that, they would go insane. And that may have been the reason why he fell off a little bit later in his career. But a guy like Joey Votto, who's hitting in the middle of your lineup and is going to hit a lot of home runs and driving a lot of runs, you want him to walk if he's getting pitched around, right? So that's the difference. It's like if you're passive and you're not taking advantage of pitches in the zone, you're too passive. But Joey Votto was the type of hitter where, they don't want to pitch to Joey Votto with a base open and runners on second and third and one out. They're just going to walk him. They're going to pitch around him or intentionally walk him and then have force outs at every base and double play opportunities at every base. So it's like anything, Buck. I mean, there's nuance to everything, but in Joey Votto's case, there probably were times where he's too passive. But he was obviously an extremely valuable player for his entire career, pretty much most of his career. And it's just a matter of, I see this a lot of high school hitters, their approaches are so bad, they don't know what they're looking for. They'll take a pitch right down the middle, and I'm like, dude, like, what are we doing? Right? So if you have to scare pitchers out of the zone, especially a guy like me. I was not a big time power guy, really fast. Like pitchers wanted to go right at me because they didn't want me on the base paths and they weren't afraid to come after me because they were like, well, worst case scenario, he's going to hit a double, maybe a triple, probably not going to hit a home run, and probably going to hit a single. So we don't want to walk him, but if he's going to hit himself on, it'll be a single and then we'll figure it out. So I had to scare guys out of the zone. I had to make sure pitchers knew, like, you leave a cookie in there, I'm still going to do some damage with it. But I was the type of hitter opposite of Joey Votto. Like, they're going to try to pitch around Joey Votto. Me, they're going to come right at me. So it just depends on the type of hitter you are, where you hit in the lineup, everything like that. 30% strikeout rate makes errors at second base. Well, it looks like for Florida, he's going to be playing in the outfield. So, that's that. We'll see how it goes for them. I mean, I think he's a good player, but like, again, he's one of those guys that goes in the portal and you're like, You're like, is he going to make a massive impact on Florida's team? Maybe, maybe not. And there's a lot of guys in the portals that do that, right? It's just like, and again, you may look at Blake Sear. I don't, is am I saying, let me know if I'm saying that right, Canes. But if you're looking at his slash line from last year, you're thinking, I mean, he's okay, but why is Florida taking him? And again, it just goes to the fact that they know what they're getting. He's done something at a high level, whereas they may have a guy who's a freshman who's not going to play, who could end up being better. But again, in a coach's mind, you're going to take the guy that you know what you're going to get versus a player who you're flipping the coin and hoping that they turn into something. So it just depends on um, what the coach's thoughts are when you're talking about stuff like that. I'm interested to see kind of what has there been any reaction to the Teacherman Jay Gibbons Instagram live. Thoughts on the transfer portal and NIL collectives? Listen, excuse me. I'm listen. I don't think there's any coach in the country, myself included, and anyone I talk to. Listen, no one loves the fact that like the recruiting timeline has now been expanded. Now not only do you have to worry about recruiting guys out of high school, but you're going to lose guys to the portal, so you got to replace them with guys in the portal. No one loves it. It's just the system it's just the environment that we're in now. About the portal, I think the NCAA and people that have been watching this show since we started know what I'm about to say. But the NCAA is really bad at recognizing or foreseeing downstream consequences. So the NCAA, even when they came out with the portal, the whole thing was about, well, there's kids that don't get to play, and right now, the transfer rules are pretty is a pretty high penalty. You got to sit out a year. We just want guys to be. Remember, the portal originally was you had a one-time, no penalty transfer, and uh, so it was a one-time thing. They wanted to give kids that were sitting the bench an opportunity to go somewhere else and maybe find playing time. Well, they never foresaw that guys were going to be using it to just upgrade, and guys going from the ACC to the SEC or the SEC to the ACC. Um, and you couple that with bringing in NIL, and all of a sudden, it went from you can transfer, you can upgrade, do whatever you want one time to, oh, now we're going to let you do it an unlimited amount of times. Oh, and now you can be paid by the schools that you transfer to. So it just turned, it's not really the portal. I mean, it's again, it's the portal for the majority percentage of players that are in there, but for a significant minority of players, it's free agency. It's all right. Well, my year's up. Let me see what I can get now. So I'm not a big fan of it, but it doesn't matter that I'm not a big fan of it. You have to learn how to operate within the environment that you are placed. And that environment means for coaches, more time spent recruiting, more time on phone calls than ever before. Um, Again, I mean, just like it's made it tougher for coaches, man. I mean, they have to be in season when some of these guys are still playing and the portal opens up. So it's like they're playing in a regional, and the portal opened up. We got to get on a conversation. We got to get on the phone with this guy right now. He's not going to be in there long. So it's just created more stress on coaches. TCU coach went on Prep Baseball, and it was honestly a great interview. He does not like that you can't recruit kids in eighth, ninth grade and build relationships with them. He says now everything is accelerated in a 1 to 2 month time span to try and find the elite guys. He also talked about Texas flipping Grady Emerson from them. He was not happy. Yeah, so it's like he said. I mean, listen, I don't think eighth graders and ninth graders need to be getting recruited. I probably disagree with him there, just because, like, quite frankly, like, yeah, you can build relationships with them, but And maybe they could make it to where they can communicate with eighth and ninth graders. You just can't offer a scholarship until August 1st of their junior year. But yeah, like Buck, I see what you're saying. I'm in agreement with you. I think there were a lot of eighth graders and ninth graders who were committing, and then that junior summer they hadn't developed the way that schools thought they were going to develop, and their scholarship got cut. So I don't think that's healthy for the high school athlete. Maybe you can allow it to where they can communicate with schools or with players, but then if you allow that, essentially you're going to have under the table things where schools are saying, "Hey, we can't offer you until August 1st, but like you're going to have an offer." Right? And so then that kid all of a sudden thinks he has an offer, and then 2 years later, all of a sudden, you're not good enough anymore. So I mean, there's nuance to it, right? But overall, I think that was a positive change. But kids committing at 13 years old was silly, 100%, and set them up for problems when they didn't pan out and got on campus and didn't have a spot on the roster. Exactly what I said, Buck, 100%. Also made him more upset because he used to work for the Texas coach and he taught him to not recruit other teams' players, and now he did it to him. Was that Kirk Sarlos? Was that Sarlos who was on Prep Baseball's thing? Because, yeah, he definitely was there for Schlossnagel when he left for A&M. They can still communicate with younger kids, but only at on-campus camps. Yeah, yeah. And again, that's like it's not really communication, right? I mean, it's just kind of they're at a camp. You can talk to them about anything, but it's not like you're building a relationship because what are you going to have the kid come to every camp you host? Um, but you're right, Buck. They can communicate with kids on at camps. I'm not seeing anything. I'm trying to see if Teacherman hasn't posted anything on X, and Jay Gibbons I don't think has either. Okay, so let's see here. Coog, what's up, Coog? Coog Sauce. He's joining the crew now. Coog Sauce is one of us now. He's been in here and active. Kids getting recruited that early. Where are they seeing these kids that young? Tournaments, etc. To my guess are camps. But essentially, what would happen, guys, is just to be honest, with like kids that young, is you're not spending a lot of times looking at them unless they're elite. So they're looking at like the PG prep baseball rankings and finding like the highest ranked guys, um, and then uh, trying to figure out, okay, you may go see that kid once or twice, and if for an eighth grader, you're like, man, this guy's really good for an eighth grader. Again, the problem with it is you would offer a kid even though you're not sure who he's going to turn out to be, and then a couple years later, they haven't. Like I sat with a very prominent, one of the best, probably one of the best coaches in the country at a currently preseason top five team last summer or 2 summers ago, and he's been there forever. He's an assistant coach, probably one of the best. He's probably one of, if not the best assistant coaches in the country. And he was watching one of his commits who had committed in like ninth grade. And he told me, he said, I'm going to have to call him and just tell him the truth. Like he hasn't made the necessary developments that we thought he would. And I'm going to have to call him and tell him he doesn't have a spot with us. Right. So that's very common, or that was very common under the old rules. It was their recruiting coordinator. It was their recruiting coordinator. Okay, okay. It was a great interview. Honestly, I'd recommend watching it. Will do. They recruited kids before puberty. That's wild, bro. Well, I guess it depends on when you go through puberty. But yeah, there was 800. There was not again, not the majority of players, like, but a substantial minority of players were getting committed in like eighth grade, ninth grade. And before the rules changed, most of your your tier one, T2 players were committing as sophomores. Which sophomore, I don't have an issue with sophomores. That's close enough. Do you have a view on the new Driveline bat speed program? Uses weighted and lighter bats. Have been doing a lot of research on it. Looks interesting. Yeah, I actually think it's good. I love the again. it goes again. This is the only issue with it is it doesn't take into account motor preferences, at least yet, from what I know. So based on if you're an aerial or a terrestrial, there's also another category which I can't remember the words for it, but it basically there's some athletes like their extremities away from their body. Some athletes like the masses and arms and everything close to their body. So if you're a guy that likes your hands closer to your body, you probably want a knob loaded bat when you're training. If you're a guy that likes, to feel the weight away from your body, you need to use an end loaded bat. So if you're doing the opposite, it could create issues. But generally speaking, it's like what Matt Swope said is you follow a lot of this biomechanic stuff, you're going to throw harder, your bat speed's going to increase. The question is it for pitchers, is it going to cause injury because you're not training properly according to your motor preferences? And for hitters, you're going to increase bat speed, but is it going to create some other issue where? And again, I talk with hitting coaches about this all the time. James Ramsey in particular at Georgia Tech, and we always talk about listen, we want bat speed, but no one cares if you have the best bat speed in the world if you have your barrel accuracy is terrible. So what the issue is, and this is getting a little deep into it, but the higher your bat speed, the better breaks you need in your swing, right? And that's the ability to slow down your rotation once you reach the point you need to get to, or else you're just spinning and creating larger or axial. That's right, Buck. Buck, you've been reading, man. The Select Festival kids, PG ranks kids from 13 under. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Those are the kids being recruited early. They also have feeder travel coaches. I think it would be useful for kids to hear from coaches. You have potential. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do / be for us to look at you when you're 15, 16. Yeah, Buck, and that's kind of what we do with all of our clients. We're like, listen, this is where you're at right now. This is the caliber school you probably fit at right now. But based on projection, if you're willing to put work in over the next year, you could get here, right? So we try throughout the whole process, like we have monthly check-in calls with all of our clients. So we talk to them about, hey, how's your work going? Like my guys, I'm always like, hey, what's your weight? If you put on weight, especially in the off season, like you told me you wanted to gain 20 pounds, how much weight did you gain this month? 4 pounds? All right, great. That's a great month. So we try to hold these kids accountable to what their goals are. Buck B for motor preferences, that's called large or axial, right? So you're large, axial, like and correct me if I'm wrong, Buck, but axial, you like that you're like you just like everything to be closer to your center line. Whereas large, I mean, you're away from your body. So those guys you see with their bats out here, or Craig Counsell, for example, like he's probably a large in that motor preference because he wants his the things away from his center line of center mass. Agree, you need to consider that. Most of what they do is oriented towards terrestrial. That's fine for my son, as he's clearly that, not aerial. Yeah, and that's what Swope says. He goes, especially for pitchers, he's like the biomechanics labs do really good work for terrestrials. He's like the issue is just if you're an aerial training as a terrestrial, you may still throw harder, but it's probably going to make it to where you're more likely to get injured. The Driveline program also has bat to ball programs as well. I'm mostly focused on bat speed now for my son, as that was his PG scouting feedback. Yeah. And I think you can do both, Buck. To me, you can train bat speed while training barrel accuracy. But yeah, I mean, I think that's again bat speed is critical. Like no one is against that. It's just we have to make sure we're training all aspects of the hitter because that is what a lot of kids do. They're like, well, my bat speed and exit velocity was this in a showcase off of like a guy throwing 50-mile-an-hour BP, and then you get him in a game against a guy who's just a fairly decent college prospect and can't make contact. And it's like, well, and again, the other issue is this: like you may have really good bat speed, but if your rotational acceleration number is really low, what rotational acceleration basically means the higher the number, the faster you get up to your top bat speed. So you may have not as great a bat speed as someone else, but you have really high rotational acceleration. It basically means that your bat speed is going to play way better than a guy with higher bat speed and a low rotational acceleration. So rotational acceleration, like James Ramsey, for instance, at Georgia Tech, that's one of the metrics he really likes to look at because in his mind, you got high rotational acceleration. That is a metric that is going to correlate to you being able to handle velocity much better. Right. And prep baseball does a great job with that. They track that on all of their showcases. They get guys rotational acceleration. So you may see a guy and think, oh, his bat speed's okay. But then you look at the rotational acceleration and you're like, oh man, that's really good. So that's one of the things I look at as well, just from learning from James when I was coaching with him at Georgia Tech, is rotational bat speed's not the be all end all, right? Because if you have high bat speed but low rotational acceleration, it takes you way longer to get up to top end speed. They also focus on attack angle and vertical bat angle. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you may have really good bat speed, but your attack angle's terrible, or your vertical bat angle's way too high. And so, yeah, you have great bat speed, but you got a really high vertical bat angle. You're coming through the zone basically vertical. You got no margin for error, timing wise, or just barrel accuracy wise. And just think about it, if you're tracking a pitch and you have a flat path, if you're a little this way, you're hitting it off the end. If you're a little this way, you're jammed. But if I'm vertical coming through like this, if I'm a little this way, swing and miss. If I'm a little this way, swing and miss. So the more vertical your bat through the zone, just the higher the whiff rate's going to be. It's just generally speaking. So you definitely want some vertical bat. And what a lot of people get wrong is they think the vertical bat angle, the way you change a vertical bat angle is just in posture. So you watch major league hitters on a pitch top of the zone, they stay pretty vertical with their chest, right? They may be hunched over a little bit, but they're not moving at all with their chest. You see them on a low pitch, as they're in their forward move, they actually start to kind of hunch over to change the angle. That's because that's changing the angle. Your barrel typically is going to be perpendicular to your spine angle. So if my spine angle is completely vertical, my bat's going to be flatter. If my spine angle now goes forward and I'm more in a diagonal, my bat or my bat path is still going to be perpendicular to my spine angle, but because I'm leaning forward and leaning over, I'm going to be more vertical. So your spine angle is going to determine your bat path through the zone, generally speaking. Now, again, there's going to be some people that are just more horizontal path. That's one of the motor preferences, vertical versus horizontal. So some guys are just going to be more horizontal movers, but their spine angle is still going to determine the overall angle. Some guys are going to be more vertical. So if their posture is more straight up and down with their spine, they're going to be able to flatten it out a little bit more. But your spine angle is always going to be determined by the height of the pitch. Typically, in really good hitters, really good professional hitters, their spine angle is going to adjust to the height of the pitch, really subconsciously. Without I did that, but I never thought about, oh, it's up. I got to while the pitch is coming, I'm not thinking, oh, it's up. I got to keep my spine angle more vertical. You know what I mean? We use blast motion to track all those, including rotation acceleration. Great. And I know that rotational acceleration number that James really liked to look for is around 20. So if he saw rotational acceleration around 20 and the bat speed was good enough, that was a really good sign. So that was kind of what he would look at metrics wise. And that's why some hitting coaches are different, but that was that was one metric that he really valued when recruiting high school hitters. I just like it as it is quite technical and measurable, which appeals to me, and you can measure progress. Yeah, that's the great thing about there's guys out there that say, oh, analytics is terrible. Guys say, oh, analytics is amazing, or all these metrics and stuff. It's really good in a sense. It's giving you objective feedback and objective data. Now, the old school scout who used to say, man, this guy's got a second gear fastball, that was a way of saying, he's either got good extension, hides it well, or he's got that four seam ride where it just kind of takes off on you, right? So scouts were able to see this, at least the really good scouts were able to see this for a time immemorium. But now with the objective data, you just have to look at the data, right? And what I try to tell you guys is that just because the metrics say something doesn't mean it's true, right? The ultimate measure of how good your pitches are as a pitcher is what the hitters do with your pitches. You may have the most elite metrics on your slider, but if every time you throw it, it gets shellacked 450 feet, is it really elite? Part of the spine angle I find works with kids is just saying hands over the over ball, which helps with that. Yeah. Yeah, hands above the baseball. 100%. I mean, your hands always have to be above the baseball, right? I mean, it's almost, and that is kind of Aaron Judge sometimes his issue with the high pitch. I mean, his hands really do get down here, and you just like if your hands are here, if your hands are right here, and the pitch is here, and again, this is probably above the zone a little bit. Like you're never getting to that pitch. Is that the whole hands to the ball philosophy? Taking your hands to the ball changes your spine angle? Um, Not really. Again, the spine angle thing, to be honest, uh, it's kind of something you develop, but it's a hard thing to really work on with the guy. Well, what you're saying is when you're looking at a player's posture and what his bat path metrics are, there may be something to changing the posture based on what the metrics of the path are. So if you have a guy who's very hunched over and he's got a lot of vertical bat, you may want to put his starting position more straight up because he's naturally going to come forward. But if he's already here, and then when he sees a pitch, he's going further, he's creating a lot of vertical bat angle, and he's going to have a very hard time on pitches like up and in, middle up, etc. So again, it's hard to you don't really make adjustments in the middle of the pitch of your spine angle. It's more of a matter of fact of like what is your motor preference in the sense that you've built up this muscle memory over decades of hitting. So what puts you in a better position to make your spine angle more adjustable to the pitch? Some guys, let's say if you have a really flat path, you may want the guy to hunch over a little bit more at the start because he's naturally going to probably come up out of that as he's loading. Um, but generally, the spine angle stuff is just something you're really not going to mess with that unless you see a really like an obvious problem based on his spine angle versus his vertical bat angle, et cetera, and other things as well. Because you can have a lot of vertical bat angle and your attack angle is also very steep, right? And if you have a steep attack angle and a lot of vertical bat, what you're going to see hitters do a lot is they're going to hit the ball straight in the ground. If they're late and if they're early, they're just going to hit the ball straight up in the air. Now, a guy with a more flat attack angle who's got vertical bat, he's going to be better at hitting. He's going to be better at hitting the low ball, but that up pitch is going to be tough, really tough. And that's kind of Aaron Judge, right? I mean, me personally as a hitter, the pitchers I always hated to face was one, for some reason, any pitcher from Asia who did the little like their motions were just kind of weird compared to American and Latin born pitchers, and they always did the little pause thing and they all threw split fingers. I did not like facing those guys. But the guys like the fastballs that I hated to face, I didn't care if you threw 100. I didn't care if you threw a sinker or even a cutter. I was pretty good at making adjustments to my swing thoughts and my path. Like if I'm facing a cutter guy, I'm telling myself in the box, like fight inside of this pitch. Fight way more inside of this pitch than you think you need to. Like make sure create way more space than you think you're going to need to. Because the reason a cutter works is you see it come out of the hand, and you're like, oh, it's middle middle, and you're swinging to a middle pitch, and as you're swinging to a middle pitch, it's just cutting in under your hands, right? So it's just cutting into the handle of the bat. You break your bat. So if you're facing a cutter guy, you got to tell yourself like get through this thing just like way faster. You're facing a sinker guy. I got to stay underneath this. I cannot hit on top of the baseball. I got to hit the bottom part of the baseball. I got to swing up. The guys that were really tough were the downhill angle pitchers that like really high release point, downhill, tall guys. Because coming out of the hand, you're like, oh, that's going to be like middle of the zone, and then it ends up almost hitting the ground because you really don't. There's not a lot of guys that have that true high release downhill fastball. Luke Jackson was one of those guys, good friend of mine, who I faced a decent amount of times in professional baseball and AAA. And I always told him, I said, dude, I think I walked every at bat against him, but it wasn't because I was tracking his pitches well. It was just like he happened to throw me balls because I always remember facing him and thinking, oh, this looks like it's middle, and then it was like way out of the zone down. What's your opinion on choking up on the bat? I love it. I did it all the time. Again, you're facing a cutter guy, choke up, right? Hit the cutter is going to take away, is going to try to cut off your barrel. So you choke up, makes it easier for you to fight inside that thing. With two strikes, I always choked up. If I'm facing a really tough lefty, I'm getting on the plate and choking up. Um, Freddie Freeman chokes up. Joey Votto choked up. Really good hitters. Like it's almost looked at as uncool now. And a lot of hitters think, and again, there is some truth to it that you could like, oh, you're losing power when you do that. But I'm part of me is like, well, with two strikes, are you still trying to hit home runs, or are you trying to fight through the at bat and earn a walk, or um, find a base hit somewhere? The, the when you choke up on the bat, you get more barrel control. So you're losing a little bit of leverage and power because obviously, um, the bat is a certain, like I swung a 33 and a half, 32 ounce bat. So if I'm choking up 2 inches, now I'm swinging a 31 and a half bat. I don't have quite the leverage, but now I have way more. And again, I'm losing a couple inches, so I need to scoot up on the plate a little bit. Um, but I'm gaining so much barrel control that I can make that slight adjustment to fight the slider off at the end. I can pull my hands in to fight the fastball off and stay alive. So to me, I don't know why everyone doesn't choke up. I think it's just an ego thing, to be honest. I've never heard a coach tell a kid, "Don't choke up. That's bad." What I see is that kids don't want to choke up because they think it's not cool, and it's like an ego thing because they're like, "Well, I'm not going to hit home runs if I don't choke up." It's like no one's telling you to choke up pre two strikes typically, though I would do it against certain pitchers, right? Like I said, if a righty cutter guy, I'm facing a righty cutter guy, I'm choking up. Um, and I just felt, I honestly, to be honest, I felt more comfortable with like a slight choke up on the bat. I did not like having my I did not like having my hand around the handle on the bottom knob of the bat. I did not like that and didn't feel comfortable to me. Um, so again, it's preference, but I do think most hitters should choke up with two strikes at the bare minimum. You seem to have a knowledgeable group. Glad I found this channel. Oh, this is a great group, Coog. This is a great group, man. Like, we got Buck B in here. You Mama's joining the group now. Canes, Caps, Cardboard. Uh, we got so many guys that are not just college baseball fans, but they really know what's going on in the game. Like we're talking about motor preferences when the stuff he's doing with his son. And I think the great thing about this channel and what we're trying to do is this is all about helping you guys understand what's really going on in college baseball, how recruiting really works, not how, some people tell you it works. And also, what's the best way to help your son develop or help yourself if you are that player develop. Um, I learned a lot in my college and professional career, and I think this is true for everybody just in life, but there's things you learn in life and you immediately think, man, if I had just known this 5 years ago, if I had known this 10 years ago. And for me, watching the motor preferences presentation at ABCA, I was immediately hooked because I just knew deep down that this is right. And myself being an aerial, um, I was training to be a terrestrial my whole life, right? So, and I always found like things that other guys are doing that really works for them. I'd try to do it, didn't work. Didn't feel comfortable. I couldn't get it to work, and I never knew why, right? I never knew why. Um, and and then I watched that presentation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was training to be a terrestrial my whole life, and that's not how I move. That's not how my body should be trained. And so looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I knew that, right? Played with Eddie Degerman, and he was way on top of the ball. You mean on top of the plate? What's a good concept for teaching a high school freshman facing higher velocity varsity pitchers? This is what I tell. Listen, I work with a high school team right now. A buddy of mine from college is the head coach there, and so he texted me a few months ago. And was like, "Dude, I need a guy that can work with hitters and the outfielders and base running." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Because I miss being on the field in the game. That's probably my biggest thing I miss about just baseball in general is being on the field. And I loved coaching at Georgia Tech. I love just being on the field, interacting with players and helping them perform. And there's no greater feeling as a coach when you've worked with a kid on a certain thing and then he executes in the game. So for a high school freshman, oh, Eddie Degman on top, okay, on top of the ball. I get what you mean, Coog. But for high school freshmen, this is what I would say. Like we as hitters in general are habitually late. So the biggest issue I see with high school hitters, generally speaking, there's swing plane issues. They're all zit. There's kids nowadays. Kids are they all they see is Instagram guys, and they try to change their swing every day, but they're all late. So for instance, with this high school team I'm working with, first practice we're on the velo machine, and everybody's just late. And what I tell them is, guys, you making a slight adjustment in your timing is not going to help because you're so locked into your timing. You need to feel uncomfortably early. So for your son who's a freshman facing the varsity arms that are throwing harder, he needs to be starting his load and like everything way earlier than he thinks. Because like some of these guys I'm watching and they're not even finishing their load and the ball's been released, right? When the ball's released, we got to be in our power positions. Your doesn't mean your foot doesn't have to be down when the ball's released, but we need to be in a position to launch, right? And so most high school hitters, they're still in their loading process when the ball is released. So then everything's a panic swing. That's why you see a lot of swing and miss and pitches out of the zone because they're not when you're late with your timing, your body subconsciously knows you're late, and that's why you see that panic swing at the pitch way out of the zone because they weren't loaded and ready, so their brain knows they have to speed up and make a decision quickly to even get close to making contact. So most high school hitters, if they just focused on their timing and really like I would tell myself in the box if I was facing velocity, I'm walking into the box audibly saying, "Be early, be early, be early, be early, be early, be early," because I know as myself as a hitter and most hitters, we're habitually late. Like we just don't know we're late, and we think it's some kind of mechanical issue. When in reality, nope, you were just late. So that's my advice to him. It's just like if he feels like he's late, which he probably is because he's a high school hitter, you can't say, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit earlier now. It's not going to be enough. You got to exaggerate it. One of my a hitting coach I had one time was like, I want you to feel so uncomfortable. I want it to feel like super uncomfortable how early you're getting started. And all of a sudden triple off the center field wall. So it's a timing. The biggest problem for young high schoolers facing varsity arms is they're so used to facing guys that are throwing way slower that their timing is just totally off, and they don't realize how much earlier they have to start their load um, when they're facing velocity. He was a pitcher. Okay, yeah, the little downhill angle is what you're saying. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it for today. Obviously, I think we streamed like almost 3 hours today with both the streams. Honestly, I was going to just go the whole way through and keep going, but my youngest son wasn't, he woke up late, so his nap we moved his nap back. So my wife had to go pick up our 3-year-old from preschool. So, and she didn't want him to fall asleep in the car and then ruin his nap. So I just, I wasn't able to continue through it, but appreciate you guys joining back and all the chat and everything. We'll be back tomorrow.